All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Studio Series Gamer Edition Bumblebee using his War for Cybertron design. Yeah, we checked out the Gamer Edition Optimus a few videos ago, and I got Bumblebee as well. I decided not to pick up Barricade. I didn't really like the looks of that figure, and I've got no huge attachment to the Barricade design from War for Cybertron, but I've always really liked the Bumblebee design. I just absolutely love the little vehicle mode here, and yeah, I think that they did it pretty well. I think that the original, Generations figure did the vehicle mode pretty well as well. But I think this one even looks a little bit more accurate to the game. It is, kind of more of like a goldy color than a yellow, but at least it's not like straight up orange like some Bumblebees have been recently. But yeah, he comes with a few weapons here, a pretty good variety, honestly. Again, he is doing the same thing that Optimus did, where instead of these being handheld weapons, except for the sword, they just plug into the replacement peg for the forearm there, so you can actually have a little gun arm. Which I kind of would have preferred if they at least had an option to have a handle on these, so you could hold them. Because I've never really liked the look of the gun arm thing from War for Cybertron, but it is accurate. But he does have a sword as well, which is handheld. Even though I'm pretty sure that the sword came out of his wrist in the game, so it's a little weird that they did the handheld weapon for just this. But yeah, he's got a few ways to store it. He's got these little slots on him here and then 4 down here that you can use to store the weapons, and then additionally he also has a slot right here, so you've got a bit of variety in terms of how you want to store it. This weapon unfortunately doesn't really fit under here. I mean, it fits, but it doesn't, you can't actually have it on the ground, whereas the other two can store completely unobtrusively, or one of the two can store completely unobtrusively on the bottom of the vehicle mode there. So you can do that. The sword also fits under there. You can also, tab the sword onto the back here, and then they want you to, put this one on top as like a weaponized thing. So I appreciate the options there. I like that at least one of the weapons can store underneath here. These, because I'm not a huge fan of the arm peg thing, I usually just leave these off to the side and store the sword under there and leave the sword with him, because it stores, kind of nice and clean in both modes. But, to each his own. It's nice to have those options there. In terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is just for the standard one with Kingdom Sideswipe. So you can see, pretty small vehicle mode, as he should be. Obviously a little bit taller and rounder. I've always really liked this vehicle mode. It's just looks like a little Tron avocado or something like that. Is really cool. Here he is with Netflix Bumblebee, so you can see what he looks like with another more recent Generations Bumblebee. Here he is with the original War for Cybertron Bumblebee, so you can see definitely a lot smaller there, which is nice to have him be a bit more in scale with the new Optimus Prime, but definitely a little bit more orange than the gold that they used on him. So I probably would have preferred this color, or just more of a straight up yellow, but I think it still works. But yeah, they both look good. I think when actually looking at models of the car from the game, this one is a bit more accurate just in terms of how the angled front here actually works out. But they're both pretty good. Here he is with the old War for Cybertron Soundwave. And then last but not least, here he is with Gamer Edition Optimus Prime, just so you can see. I think that scale works better than that. They're both smaller, but he should really be a lot smaller in comparison to Optimus, and I think that works pretty well. Now, transformation for this guy is actually pretty interesting. It pulls a lot of really neat little tricks. Obviously, we can just take the weapons off, however you have them stored, and put them off to the side. You want to take this back panel here and just untab it and bring it up like this. Now, when you're going back into vehicle mode, it is sometimes hard to get this panel to tab into place because you see the big obvious tabs here and you want those to tab in, but really the ones that are doing most of the work are actually these smaller tabs. So if you're having a hard time pegging in place, make sure you're actually pushing it from the center rather than, the logical place to push it, which is from the sides. And now it's not wanting to say, which is weird because I had no issues with it since I discovered that. But there we go. Yeah, so it stays pretty well. But yeah, you just want to untab that, and then the legs back here. First of all, you just want to take these little bits, which are the toes, and just flip them down just like this. Reach in here and get these little tiny pieces, and then they flip around like that to kind of be like the foot cage that he had in the game, and then take each of these and rotate them out to the side, and then you can untab the leg from the rest of the body and kind of bring it up here on the knee, and then also hinge it around like this and click it into place. And that's how the legs are formed, which is pretty simple, pretty neat, but a lot of weird little like maneuvers there, which I think are kind of cool. Then the arms, because, you know, the original one just kind of, you know, opted for taking this whole section and making it the guard on the arm, and then, you know, having like little smaller, you know, fake versions of this to show up on the chest. This one actually tries to, you know, do the much more accurate kind of like weird arm guard that he had in the game, and it does it in a pretty neat little way here. Basically, this cut here, you take the wheel itself, and it helps to kind of rotate it out. You don't technically have to rotate it out, but just for like getting this panel cleared from the inside of the arm, it's a lot easier. And then you rotate this the rest of the way so it actually sits like that, and then the hand folds up, and where the wheel was, it kind of like folds in like that, which is a really cool way of doing that, because that was always like one of the weird things from his design in the game, where one of the wheels was like completely surrounded on all sides in the robot mode configuration, and it never really made sense like how it would end up on the ground in vehicle mode. And I think that's a really clever way of doing it, and it's definitely a lot more accurate to the game there. So you just want to do that on both sides, just like that. Then the arms here, you kind of want to bring this up a little bit just so you've got a bit more clearance, and then it helps to take this panel and rotate it up as well so you can actually use that hinge, because there's a little tab on there that kind of like fits into the hinge there, which can be kind of difficult, honestly, sometimes to get this like locked in vehicle mode. It always kind of wants to pop up, but it usually stays once you actually get it. But yeah, you just want to fold that up, so you can fold this up, and then you've got the clearance to take the shoulders and rotate them forward just like this, and then take the actual shoulder pads and then rotate them down on the arm like that, so it's a little bit more accurate to the orientation they were in the game. And then rotate the arms so they're facing forward. And then, so it kind of does it automatically a lot of the time, but it's kind of neat. The fenders here actually compress in a little bit like that, which just makes his chest a little bit thinner in robot mode, which is neat. Then you want to bring this back so you can, like, you know, without having to mess with the little like clip that this little piece goes into, you want to bring this back so you can take this panel and actually feed it through to the other side, which can be kind of tricky sometimes, but basically you just want to do that so you can rotate it up like this. And then you can take the whole thing. Well, actually, first you want to take the back section here, and it will kind of unclip and then fold out like that, just straighten out, and then rotate them around the waist. And then you can take this whole section and rotate it down, and then this tab right here will go into this little slot on that panel that we folded up there, just like that. And then the backpack here just double hinges up and then tabs in a few places like that. And there we have Gamer Edition Bumblebee in his robot mode. And yeah, a lot of really neat tricks for the transformation. The robot mode, I think is, it's fine. It's not perfect. I think the main thing for me is just like the whole body feels very like squished up here. And I think he looks pretty good from the front if you can get past the body being squished up here. But when you rotate him to the side, it definitely juts out a lot more than the like model from the actual game, because I mean, to be fair, the model from the game kind of impossibly like reshaped this front section, so it's not totally, I think, a possible thing to achieve. I also don't love that, you know, with the way that the fenders fold up, you can kind of see into the body, and it's a little bit hollow in there, and it's definitely noticeable from a lot of angles. But other than that, I think he's pretty good. I love the way that the arms ended up. I think that, you know, this is a lot more accurate to how it actually looked in the game, and it's really impressive to me that they were able to figure that out. The legs are fine. Maybe could have used a bit more paint down here. He also does a bit of cheating, kind of like the old like Transformers Prime version of cheating, where you can like clearly see the wheels right here, but because the wheels were supposed to be kind of like internal on the model, they decided to just sculpt wheels on the other side, which bugs me. I'm happy they at least didn't pick it out in paint, because then it's easier for me to ignore. But yeah, definitely, I think the legs on the old, you know, Generations Deluxe definitely look a little bit better. But, you know, I think that it still gets the point across. But yeah, no, he looks pretty good in terms of articulation. The head is on a ball joint, so it can rotate around. Pretty nice looking head sculpt here. Again, pretty similar to the old one, but still works. Gets a pretty good range here. He definitely hunches down a little bit. which is mostly accurate to how it was in the game, but definitely there's a temptation to kind of like straighten it up like that, but it is supposed to be sitting forward, so his head is like sitting on this bit of an angle. I don't know, just worth mentioning. The shoulders are on ball joints. They can rotate around like that and then rotate out to the side. Definitely the shoulder guards kind of like bump into things sometimes, but it's not too bad. It's got a bicep swivel, about 90 degrees of bend at the elbow, nothing at the wrists. He does have a waist cut. It only gets about that far, but that's fine. It just starts bumping into the chest at some point. And then the hips are on ball joints. They can fold forward about that far, back about that far, out to the side about that far. He's got a thigh swivel. He's got a little over 90 degrees of bend at the knee. It does kind of end up unclicking itself at some point, so that this little like corner section can fit in the like gap on the inside of the thigh, but I still think that looks mostly natural. And then the ankle tilt, unfortunately, for transformation goes the other way. So you get like, from stock straight, you get like a very tiny amount of ankle tilt, but he really doesn't have like a tremendous amount of ankle tilt. So if you, bring his feet out to the side, you really can't bring his ankles in more than that, unfortunately. But his feet are thin, so it's not the end of the world. And then if you want to count this, you can fold his toe down a little bit. I don't know, that could be helpful for some poses potentially. Yeah. Again, I think that the portions of the body are a little bit awkward, but he has a lot of fun to mess with, so I kind of, forgive it. In terms of his weapons, obviously we can bring these on here. He does the same thing as Gamer Edition Optimus Prime, where one of his forearms, specifically the right one, can unplug. You can see, that causes the little elbow joint there to be a little asymmetrical, since this one is yellow and just part of that. I still don't know why they didn't just, like, do the peg on both sides, because like you could switch hands in the game, so I don't know, it's a weird choice to me. I would have preferred that they do it the other way so it was symmetrical, but whatever. And then he could actually use both of his guns at the same time. But yeah, you want to just pull the arm out here. Now it is worth noting that this is a keyed peg. Like specifically for him, there's a little notch out of the peg, so you can only plug the arm in one way and it can't rotate on that joint, and it is a little bit tight. So at first I was like, I know this just pegs in, but it doesn't feel like it rotates at all, and it wasn't immediately pulling out. But if you do give it a good yank, then it does end up coming out. But I thought that it was like accidentally glued in place at first, because it was like I was having such a hard time getting it off. But I was like, oh, that's why it doesn't rotate, because it's keyed. But yeah, you can take that, put it off to the side, and then the guns here, you can just plug on whichever you want and give him the that big gun there, or this little more like, I don't know, kind of looks like maybe it could be like a grappling hook gun. I don't think that's what it was, but yeah, you can do that. There's no way, unfortunately, to have like the sword kind of sticking out of his wrist like it was in the game, but you can just have him hold it like a regular sword, which works. Now, unlike Gamer Edition Optimus Prime, there is nowhere to store the severed arm here, which honestly doesn't really bother me all that much, because like, in theory, it's supposed to be transforming out of that. But in terms of storage here for the other weapons, because that top tab is now folded up into the body, you can only really store 2 of them. Like, there are 4 tabs back here, but you can't really get any of them in an orientation so that like both of them can sit on the the tabs that are actually next to each other. Like, if you try to tab in the sword, it goes too far back. If you try to take this one, it goes too far back. So you can only really store 2 out of the 3 weapons at a time, however you want to do it. Like I said, because I don't really like the gimmick with the detached arm, I generally just leave these off to the side and just leave the sword on his back myself. But, worth mentioning that you can't store all 3 at the same time. And I actually haven't tried this out yet, but if you take Gamer Edition Optimus Prime's gun, does this work? I assume it would. It's yeah, that works. I mean, because he has like this extra bit that kind of folds into the elbow, he can't totally straighten out his arm, but you kind of give him a big gun arm there, which I think looks kind of cool. I think it actually looks a little bit cooler than the guns he comes with, but yeah, that's a neat option there. Yeah, again, with this gimmick, like I kind of wish that the weapons had an optional peg or something so you could actually have him hold them, just as regular weapons, but I thought maybe at first that the actual tab that it uses to plug in might be able to like fit in his hand, but it is too small, and then also kind of bumps into his arm guard there, so it doesn't really work, unfortunately. But it's accurate to the game for the most part. But at least for me, I can just leave him with his sword and call it a day. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, for the standard one, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe. So you can see he's kind of short, but he's mostly an average size deluxe here. He's like a little bit shorter than Sideswipe, but not by a whole lot. He's really pretty average there. Here he is with Netflix Bumblebee, so you can definitely see that a little illustrated a bit more. Again, like I like that the gold is at least more gold and less orange. But yeah, he's a lot taller than the Netflix Bumblebee. Here he is again with War for Cybertron Soundwave. So you can see what they look like together. I think that scale works out pretty well. Again, the scale in War for Cybertron was a lot less varied than G1. Like, they were all closer to the same height than in G1, where Bumblebee was like here and Optimus Prime was like that. So, I think that works relatively well. Here he is with the original War for Cybertron Bumblebee, who he's much shorter than, just because, this figure was kind of like weirdly tall. So you can see how that works out there. Again, I think that they, this one does some things better. This one does other things better. I'd say that the legs are a lot more successful on the original one, whereas the arms are more successful on him because they don't have like the weird sort of like angled hands, and then the little arm guard bits are a bit more accurate to what he had going on. I think that proportionally, like, he looks a little bit better, but he's also, a little bit more out of scale with most of the relevant figures that you'd put him with. So, whatever. Color's a bit better on him. Let's see, head sculpts I'd say are about the same. I think that they both look fine. Yeah, it's kind of just a matter of preference. He does have the flip out arm blade thing, but then you can't do like the gun arm thing. So, kind of whatever. He doesn't actually end up coming with a gun that's like accurate to his sort of like default gun from the game, like this guy did, which was like a handheld weapon. But in the game, I'm pretty sure it's still transformed out of his arm. I can't really remember. But you could have him hold this gun if you want to do that. I mean, the gold is not a perfect match there, but I still think that looks pretty good, although obviously there's no way to store it in either mode. I think that they're both fun. Something that I didn't even realize about this guy until I saw how this guy worked was like, with the way that the shoulders worked, I never even realized that the shoulders on him were kind of cheating, because like they were supposed to be part of like the, pink techie line that ran through the vehicle mode, whereas these kind of hide internally. Before, I didn't really realize that until this guy's transformation, where that actually happens. I was like, oh, neat. But like I said, they're both good, just kind of for different reasons. And then last but not least, here he is with Gamer Edition Optimus Prime, who I think he looks really good with. Again, for like a lot of Optimus Prime and Bumblebee scales, I think that would be too close. But in War for Cybertron, this really was about more how they scaled in game, so I think that works pretty well. And now, in terms of like the weapon swapping stuff, something silly that you can do is because these both unpeg, you can give him Optimus Prime's arm, which looks really stupid. You can't do it the other way though, because this one has the keyed slot, and Optimus just has like a regular peg there. So bummer. Come on, cowards, let this happen. Won't you let this happen? But yeah, you can do that. You can also give Optimus Prime the weapons that came with Bumblebee, because these ones actually don't have the keyed slots. They look a little bit small in there, but in terms of just like, I like the idea of like each of these guys coming with different weapons that you could swap between them, because in the game, you'd pick up different guns and different characters could hold the same gun that would be transferring out of their arm. So I don't think that looks especially good, but in theory, I like that you can do that. But yeah, I think that the gimmick could have worked a little bit better if they had like intended it to be, like the kind of like swappable, so you could give them different weapons. But it probably works a little bit better with Bumblebee and the other like deluxes, and Optimus Prime with the other Voyagers. But because they're in a different size class, then this ends up looking huge on him, and these end up looking really tiny on him. So I understand why it doesn't work super well, but worth mentioning. But that's pretty much all there is to him. Honestly, a pretty good little figure, not without its issues. I think that some of the design stuff for the robot mode, particularly with like how the chest works and how it's like a little bit long in the front and a little bit smushed and a little bit hollow. That's probably my least favorite thing about the figure. But other than that, I think that it does a few like really clever tricks for transformation. I think that the vehicle mode, despite the fact that I really like the vehicle mode on him, I think his is almost even better. I mean, it's certainly a bit more accurate to the game. I think I like them about equally, but you know, I think the comparison with these guys, I think that people immediately assumed that this one was much better, and he's pretty good. I really do like this figure, but this one does do some things better. So I really do think it's kind of a toss-up for me. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Make sure to check me out on Instagram, where I post various toy-related things. That's toys.n.art. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Gamer Edition Studio Series Bumblebee.